Hey everyone, today's video is about a Shulker farm design for the latest Minecraft preview, aka 1.18.30.23, where they introduced the Shulker duplication or reproduction mechanic into Minecraft Bedrock Edition. It is not exactly the same as in the Java edition, but it still allows us to make some farms. And in fact, in my opinion, these farms are a lot simpler and can be scaled up very easily. So what you're seeing here is a design that consists of 16 cells. Each one of these is one cell. And I do want to credit Tartar because it is based off of his initial concept, but this is quite different from his original design, so I do want to make a video of my own on it, and I think this is pretty good. So the good thing about this farm is that it's completely relock proof, so you can leave the area or log out of the game and it won't break. And so if I load back in, you'll see that it's still completely working, so that's awesome. The farm is also infinitely expandable, more or less. The only thing you need to respect is the spacing, because you need a certain spacing between the shulkers or else they will not produce any new shulkers. As for the rates, each one of these cells consists of 2 shulker mobs, and each cell produces around 161 shulker shells per hour, and this is not using any sort of looting. So that's pretty good, because otherwise you would have to use a trident killer and then rethrow every trident, etc. So that's about 80 shulker shells per shulker that you transport into the system per hour. And since this example here consists of 16 modules, you'll get around 2580 per hour out of this farm, which is around 40 stacks of shulker shells per hour. Due to the way the shulker duplication works in the Minecraft Bedrock Edition, which is a little different than the Java edition, in my opinion it is not worth to make a portal based design or to make a trident killer based design that uses looting 3 to get more shulker shells. The first reason for that is that the shulkers can't actually hit themselves with their own bullet. That's why we have 2 shulker mobs in here. And so what happens is that the snow golem shoots at the shulker mob, which aggroes it, and it will then attempt to shoot the snow golem, but the water will push back all of the shulker bullets back at the other shulker in here. The second reason why Java edition shulker farm designs are not so great on the Bedrock edition is that the shulker mobs will sometimes randomly teleport out without leaving a new shulker behind. So that would mean that sometimes there's an empty spot in here, and we don't want that, of course, because that means that you have to manually restock a new shulker with a minecart and an activator rail, and it's quite tedious, so you don't really want that. And the third reason is that it's actually very neat that when the shulker dies, as you can see, it will always leave behind a new shulker, given that it is killed by another shulker bullet. So yeah, that's pretty good, because it pretty much guarantees us that we'll have both of our shulkers in the system. And the one shulker will always kill the other shulker in this cell. So that saves us the killing part that we would otherwise have to do either manually or with a trident killer. And so we have that all here, and what we just have then is the drops at the bottom that we simply collect with a hopper minecart running under the line of these. That was the basic idea of Tartar's modules, but now I want to show you my modifications that make this somewhat more efficient. Notably, as you can see, there is a pressure plate down here, and what that simply detects is whether the shulker is fully open. That means that it is aggroed by the snow golem. And the reason for that is that we want to make sure that we can close this trapdoor when the shulker is already fully open, because we want the snow golem to hit the shulker mob only once so that it fully opens, otherwise it just keeps peeking and it isn't fully open. But then when it is fully open, we want to close this trapdoor so that the snow golem can't actually shoot any snowballs in there. And the reason for that is not that it doesn't attack the shulker anymore, but the reason for that is that when it shoots snowballs, it can kill some of the shulker bullets, and that slows down the farm because it means that it won't make it all the way back here, and it won't hit the other shulker behind it. All this is done with the pressure plate that I told you about. What this pressure plate does is that it powers the piston, but the piston can't extend because it is blocked by obsidian, and that turns off the torch to the side of it. This is a Bedrock Edition exclusive redstone feature. It's called Torch SI, SI standing for soft inversion, and so when the pressure plate powers the piston, which then depowers the torch, it then toggles this trapdoor. So when this pressure plate is not active, this trapdoor opens, and that allows the snow golem to shoot the shulker mob. And once the snow golem shoots the shulker mob, it will fully open, which in turn triggers the pressure plate below, which then once again closes the trapdoor. This of course works because the shulker mob has a different collision box depending on its state. So when it's fully open like that, it is 2 blocks in height, and because we have it upside down, it will of course trigger the pressure plate. But when it is only peaking, like so, then it isn't 2 blocks tall. And so the reason we need it fully open is that the shulker bullet from the other shulker can actually hit it. Because when the shulker mob is not completely open, then it is immune to projectiles. Now the reason that we have an observer here that is looking at powered redstone dust is that sometimes the trapdoors can be incorrectly open or closed upon a relock. And that would significantly slow down the farm because it would mean that the snow golem can't actually shoot the shulker in the first place and aggro it, so that this one wouldn't stay completely open. And it would take the time until it randomly starts peaking and the shulker bullet from the other shulker hits it at the same time, and then it has to die. And so the reason we have this observer right here is that upon relock, this observer will pulse. It is a bug. The observer will pulse upon relock when facing powered redstone dust. And so in this case, we're actually using a very, very annoying bug that everyone hates to our advantage. And that way we make it relock proof. The reason the snow golems are standing on edge rods specifically is that because it's the exact height we need for the snow golems to be able to hit the shulker mob when the trapdoors open, but unable to when the trapdoor is closed. And so as I stated before, the shulker bullet will most of the time be pushed back by this flowing water, but sometimes it actually manages to go forward, and that's why we have the soul sand right here, so that it will always hit the ceiling when it gets too close, so that way it will never actually kill the snow golem. And of course the entire farm is properly spaced and teleport proofed. Shulkers will always attempt to teleport to a full side of a solid block, so we basically spam glass and buttons all over the place so that the shulkers don't have anywhere to teleport, and so that's the only place they will stay. Also worth mentioning is that items don't actually trigger stone pressure plates, and that's not a bug, that's an intended feature by the way. So that's good because that makes sure that the items won't mess up our detection system for the open shulkers. Now, as I mentioned, this farm needs proper spacing, so you can't make it any more dense. And the basic idea is that a shulker will check in a 17x17x17 box around it for other shulkers. And in Minecraft Java Edition, each additional shulker in that 17x17x17 box will reduce the chance of a new shulker spawning by 20%. So if there's 5 shulkers in the 17x17x17 box with this one shulker, then it will never generate a new shulker. Strangely, as I mentioned before, when the shulker is killed by another shulker bullet, it will generate a new shulker 100% of the time. But once I add one other shulker inside the range, then sometimes it won't generate another shulker when it dies, which is kind of strange. So yeah, you don't really want more than these 2 shulkers per cell, or rather you don't want to put these cells closer to each other than they are right now. So right now between this shulker right here and this shulker there's exactly 8 blocks, and likewise between this shulker and this shulker there is also exactly 8 blocks of spacing. This isn't exactly coherent with the Java Edition mechanics, where each additional shulker will reduce the chance by 20%, meaning that at 1 shulker in the range it's 80%, and with 5 shulkers in the range it's 0%. But honestly, given the fact that shulkers can't actually hit themselves with their own bullets, it is necessary that it is like that. Of course, the biggest issue you might be wondering about is, well, how do I get all these shulkers? Of course, you could head out to the end cities and get all of those shulkers back, but that's not really necessary. What you can build for this is a shulker breeder. So right now we're only farming the shulker shells because of course we're making use of the fact that a new shulker will always spawn when the old one dies, given that it is killed by a shulker bullet. But you can still make shulker farms where it gives you an extra shulker mob. The reason I'm not doing that here is because it's much less practical, as I mentioned previously. The reason we're not doing that is because the shulker mobs will still teleport even if they don't actually reproduce or duplicate. And that means that we have to restock the shulker mobs into that position. It's doable, but it's not very practical, and that's the reason we're not doing it for the actual shulker shell farm itself, which is all of these. That's nice. But if you want to get more shulker mobs to supply into these chambers, then you can make a shulker breeder. I'll make a separate video for that, of course, because it is necessary to build this one in the first place. Well, as I mentioned, technically you could just go out to entities and yoink a bunch of shulker mobs, but that's not going to be practical because you have to teleport them back thousands of blocks and all that, and it's, you know, it's hard. So far it's been working 100% reliably. And as I mentioned, it's relock proof, so I think this is the design to go for when you want shulker shells. I also want to mention that adding looting 3 is technically possible, but it's really not worth it. And if you want looting 3, then you need to go with a design that actually produces an extra shulker mob and then transports it out of the range. It is overall very slow, and it will be very massive compared to this one, which can be very easily stacked and expanded, so I think this one is the clear winner. At first I was a bit disappointed because the implementation of the shulker reproduction seemed to be lackluster at best, but now that I got to play with it and that I saw Tartar's take on it, honestly, I think this is better than the Java Edition Shulker Reproduction. It's one-dimensional, so no nether is involved, and as I mentioned many times already, it is super easily expandable. So that's the great part about it. So that's about it. I don't want to overstretch this video. I put Tartar's channel link and his video link to his concept in the description, so make sure to check that out and also drop him a sub. I probably won't be making a tutorial for this too soon, because before I do that, I need to design a shulker breeder that actually produces more shulkers than it has. But for your convenience, I've included a worlds download in the description. That way you can play around with it, and if you're already playing in the previews, then you can build it yourself. If you use this farm or modify it and publish it on social media, please make sure to credit Tartar and myself. I would highly appreciate it, of course, and come on, that's just common courtesy. So that's about it for this showcase. If you liked it, then you know the usual. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like maybe. And yeah, I have tons more stuff like that on my channel, so you might want to check that out if you're interested in this type of content. And that's pretty much it. I'll see you around. Bye!